Hello, and welcome to my presentation on teaching and learning, using knowledge to advance instruction and learning. This presentation was created and is being narrated by Melissa Novak on May 15th, 2016 in East Brunswick, New Jersey. Now, as we begin, I'd like for you to think about your experiences in school. And I think for many of you, this clip from the Peanuts really exemplifies your experiences in school. I bet you for a lot of you that little video clip made you nod your head and brought back a lot of memories. And if that didn't do the trick, maybe this picture will. Sitting in neatly formed rows, listening once again to the teacher lecture at you, and then, if we were really lucky, we were given a worksheet at the end while the teacher sat at their desk. If we take a look at the history of learning, one of the behavioral scientists that stands out is B.F. Skinner. He was a behaviorist, and he was a big proponent of the use of reinforcement. He was an American behaviorist from 1904 to 1990. And what we've learned by making advancements with what we know about the brain and learning and teaching is that if we use B.F. Skinner's theories, we are not giving students skills, we're only teaching them compliance. And now we know that this only works to reinforce behaviors and not teach learning. If we take a look at B.F. Skinner's operant condition chamber, which he used to study animal behavior, we'll see that in this experiment, what Skinner did was he challenged a rat to figure out how to get a reward, and in this case it was food. And essentially what happened was all the rat had to do was perform the same task over and over again to get the reward. Historically, that's how education worked. You were a good student, you did your homework, you listened in class, and you studied for the test, and you got the reward. It didn't matter if you were actually learning anything. I want to ask you how much better your memories of school would be if this was the classroom that you remembered. I certainly agree that working together in a group fosters more learning and students can have a little bit of fun. Now, if we move forward in what we know about the brain and education, and we're here in the 21st century. Today we know a lot more about the brain and about how we learn. During my coursework here at Walden, I was introduced to the work of Dr. Patricia Wolf. She's a former K-12 teacher, and her major area of expertise is in the application of brain research to educational practice. Dr. Wolf brought to my attention the concept of neuroplasticity. And according to neuroplasticity, we are constantly sculpting our brain via the experiences that we have. So neuroplasticity provides us with a brain that can adapt not only to changes inflicted by damage, but allows adaptation to any and all experiences and changes we may encounter. Another suborgan of the brain that we've learned about is the amygdala. And through brain research, what we have found is that the amygdala is the part of the brain that holds emotion. This is why when teaching, it is very important to connect some sort of emotion to what students are trying to learn. Another very important part of the brain is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that stores new memories and new information. So knowing the very important parts that these two small structures of the brain play, we as teachers can use that information to create student-centered practices which will replace the teacher-centered practices of the past. And when teaching is student-centered, we focus on several aspects of teaching and learning, not simply having the teacher up front and lecturing. So now that we know all this, how can we make our teaching better and therefore help student learning? Another scientist who studied human behavior is Lev Vygotsky. He was born in 1896 and died in 1934, and he was a Soviet psychologist who felt that the brain was sculpted by experiences. And he is the father of constructivism, which essentially says that in order to learn new information, you have to connect it to old information. So now that we know all this, we can take into account individual factors that impact learning. There are a bunch of learning styles as identified by Howard Gardner, but if we wanted to streamline the learning styles, we can break them down into visual, auditory, reading and writing preference, and kinesthetic. So if we understand how the brain works and then use some sort of learning survey to figure out what kind of learners our students are, we can help students to make connections to what they already know so that their new learning can be as powerful as possible. There are also social factors that impact learning. I'm a middle school teacher, so I definitely know a lot about this as students are physically and emotionally changing. So maybe students, have some sort of, they're being pressured by their peers to, make poor choices. So that's something that they have to deal with, and that might impact their learning. Maybe their hormones are affecting the way that their brain works. So we do have a lot to take into account in terms of how the social and their mental health impacts their learning. So in all of this, what is the role of technology? We're in a technology-driven world where everyone is pretty much attached to technology. And I feel like for teachers, it's our job to teach students how to use technology to be good members of the 21st century workforce. And what I mean by that is that we need to, as we're shifting from teacher-centered learning to student-centered to learner-centered learning, we can use technology to turn students into critical thinkers because they can use the vast variety of applications out there to find information, and then they can use that information and apply critical thinking concepts that they have. They can use all the technology around to be good communicators, making PowerPoint presentations and writing nice papers to communicate the good ideas that they have. And in doing so, they can always collaborate with others using the Google suite of information, where they can readily share documents. And all of this will allow students to create high quality work. All of this is really important because in the real world, working together in groups as collaborative teams is really what it's all about. There are very few professions where you sit in a cube all to yourself. So by teaching students in a more learner-centered way, we're preparing our students for the real world. So in conclusion, since the earliest time of education, teaching and learning has come a long way. And in addition to some other sources such as, behaviorists and psychologists that have studied teaching and learning, understanding how the brain functions has also helped us to get there. And if we use a constructivist approach, we can certainly prepare students for the 21st century workplace. And these are my references. There's a whole lot. There's 3 pages. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Have a good day.